Welcome to another video. In this one, I'm going to be painting this planar head statue. 3D Total was kind enough to send it over for me to test out, and what better way to test it out than to paint a couple studies from it. The nice thing about having it in person is that you can choose the lighting scenarios, setups that you want. I took some pictures ahead of time. I definitely went crazy testing out different angles and pictures and lighting scenarios, but that's just one of the benefits of having different statues. You can get different lighting setups and different angles and whatnot. But for today's video, I thought I'd keep it simple with just a nice profile view, just a side profile. Makes it simpler. You only have to draw one half of the face. And just for a size comparison, this is the 3D Total female statue. This is what it looks like. This is the size comparison to the original Acryl head statue. It's about a fourth of the size or so, but it feels nice and sturdy in the hand. It's definitely solid construction, very well made. Design lines are nice and clean. Overall, it's a nice little lighting reference that's small enough to fit even on the most crowded desk like mine is currently. But with that, let's get ready to paint. So a bit about what I'm using today. I'm painting in a Strathmore 500 series mixed media, 100% cotton paper, and it's 190 GSM. So it's a bit thicker and can withstand wet media pretty well. Just some clips to clamp it down to keep the page flat. It helps it to dry a little flatter. Paint I'm gonna be using is Turner acrylic gouache. And then have a nice view of the palette below so you can see the colors I'm mixing. And with that, let's get started. So for the first order of business, I just want to put down a nice base color that I can use just to get rid of the white of the paper. And today I think, just looking at the reference, there's a lot of cool colors, a lot of cool blues and whatnot. So I think I want to go with like a kind of warm color. I think I'm gonna go with a burnt umber just to knock back the white of the paper, and it will help me to be able to also judge the values better that I'll be painting on top of it, but also complement the cooler colors that will be going on top. So there's some blue lighting that will look nice on top of this brown. I'm just filling in silhouette of the pencil sketch. This is, once again, it's just acrylic gouache, and it's quite dilute right now, so it actually almost resembles watercolor. And the main difference between regular gouache and acrylic gouache is that acrylic gouache doesn't reactivate once it's dry. So that means it's easier to layer colors on top of each other. But the downside is it might be more tricky to blend. So starting, we have our base layer down, and I'm gonna give this a second to dry. And I'm actually gonna speed it up using a hair dryer. All right, looks good, dry enough. Now, before moving on to paint, I want to also do a quick value study just to break down a reference image into basic 2 or 3 values, just to roughly map out the values and get a good feel of the general lighting structure of the image. The nice thing about these planar statues is that it makes the planes of the face really obvious, so it makes value studies pretty straightforward. I always like to do this step right in the beginning just to get my eyes used to judging values and looking to see how dark the shadows are and how light the light areas are. And just a simple 1 or 2 value structure is good enough. This is just meant to group all the shadows and light and dark forms together. I'm also using a large 1-inch flat brush. This is a Princeton Velvet Touch flat inch wash. All right, so that's the value study. And now time to start painting the colors that I'm seeing. But one thing actually, before I do that, I might if I put in the background now, since I'm painting with there's gonna be a lot of light colors and whites in the reference image, especially in a lot of the light facing plane, they're gonna be near white. So if I knock back the white of the background as well, that will actually make the white paint stand out more, because the white gouache is not going to be anywhere as bright as the white of the paper. So it's a good idea in the beginning just to knock the white of the paper out and help you to be able to judge your values a little bit better. So yeah, let's do that. I'm just going to use that same burnt umber from before just to knock back the white. I'm going to get the shadow in the back of the statue. That's our basic structure. Now I'm gonna start painting in the shadows. This looks, I could probably mix up some type of blue. I'll probably start with the ultramarine. Let a little bit of that burnt umber get inside of it, but have it mostly ultramarine and then a tiny bit of white. Let's see what that looks like. For these blue planes, let's see. The paint is still pretty dilute at this point. Just putting stuff down to see what it's gonna look like, and we can always adjust later. But I always that blue and burnt umber is a nice color mix. They complement each other nicely because brown is basically a very desaturated dark orange, which is complementary to blue. There's a bit of bounce light on the underside of this plane, because the actual statue, the side actually isn't just a flat surface. It like the angle kind of cuts in a little bit. So this plane is actually facing more downwards than this one. This bounce light is bouncing up into this plane here, which makes it look a little bit lighter than this plane here. The backside of the statue, it's a thin sliver that's actually the darkest values on the entire thing. I guess it's a thin sliver here that's really dark, and that goes all the way along the entire back edge. With the exception, this part, it's a little bit of bounce light coming through. You can see it if you zoom really close, but compared to everything else, it's quite dark. So for that, I'm just letting this mixture have a little bit more of the burnt umber mixed into that blue. Burnt umber and blue almost make a close to black color. It's a little too dark, but we can always build up the opacity later. And I like to jump around, put some colors down, jump around to see, so that I can give them a chance to dry, see how they look, and then adjust as necessary as I go along. Because one of the tricky things about any kind of gouache, whether it's acrylic gouache or regular gouache, is that there's always going to be some type of color shift no matter what. So these early stages for me, it's all about just getting some colors down, seeing how they look, so that I can adjust as necessary. But yeah, for the most part, this whole painting is probably just going to be done with burnt umber, ultramarine, and white. That's pretty much all the colors we'll need. It's looking okay. It's still the lightest white still need to be added. I'm going to keep building up these shadows a little bit more first before I put the lightest white. With each layer starting to add more and more white to the mixture, which not only increases the value, but it bumps up the opacity as well. The nice thing about having an actual statue, you can paint from life, which lets you be able to see a bit more colors. In this video, I wanted to have this specific lighting, which I wouldn't have been able to get at the way my desk is currently set up. And also, just having a photo makes it nice for the video because I can point and circle things. It's also always good to paint from life when you can. Just moving, constantly observing. All right, time to start getting some white, painting like these lightest highlights with the white. See how that looks. See what adjustments need to be made. So far, this white is it's not pure white. Pure white. It has a touch of some of the colors below it. And I'm gonna save. I'm not seeing quite too many places where pure white will be necessary, but there is like a ever so slight like the lightest areas are this upper plane on the ear, and then this very subtle like ridge where the two planes meet. So I might save the pure white for those areas, but other than that, probably won't be using much pure white. Once again, just using this large flat brush. Flat brushes are nice for planar painting because it makes it easy to get blocks of paint and blocks of color. And when you need more accuracy, you can use the corner of the brush. One brush can be quite versatile, but at a certain point, I might see how long I can get away with just using this big brush. And if you're gonna be using acrylic gouache, you definitely want to make sure you keep the palette and paints wet on the palette. It will dry out on you and become unusable. So this plane is a little bit lighter than I have it in my painting, so I'm just gonna layer on top of it. For this eye shape, I'm gonna try, it's a little small, but I'm gonna try to get it using this big flat brush, just using the corner of it. Hopefully, I might have to switch to a smaller brush. Yeah, I think I might have to switch to a smaller brush. So yeah, switch to the smaller 1/2" angle shader brush, it comes to a nice point. Alright, not bad, not bad. Now it's a matter of refining edges, continuing to observe and see how the values shift as the paint dries. Maybe leave some bits of the burnt umber base layer, let that shine through a little bit, just for some added visual interest. But yeah, this under this nose is quite a bit darker than I have it. Also the bottom lip is untouched. Layers, layers, layers. It's my favorite way to work with gouache or acrylic gouache. In front of this eye is a bit of a plane shift where this plane is a little bit lighter than the other one. And also creating some texture by building it up in layers and not just jumping straight to a final opaque gouache. It's nice to build some texture and not end up with the super flat image, because acrylic gouache definitely dries to a flat finish compared to other mediums. I just realized that I'm painting in mostly grays and the palette has a gray background, which kind of makes it probably hard to see in the camera what colors are on the palette, but want to make this area under the neck a bit bluer, more on the blue side than I have it currently. And there's a plane that stops about right there. So this is quite thin. We'll see how it looks once it dries. And then to soften the edge, just dilute the brush a little bit with some water, and then brush over the edge you want to soften. So hopefully it makes a nice transition. One of the things I noticed is that some of the brightest highlights are on the borders between two planes in the light. Like here, here, here. Put those borders in. So far this is all just ultramarine, burnt umber, and a little bit of white. Very limited palette. This bottom part's a little bit too light. I'm gonna mix up hopefully some burnt umber and white can let some of that white show through so that it can have a slightly brighter and warmer value than the upper plane that I was talking about earlier. So I'm just glazing it with dilute paint just so it slightly tints it. I want to carve out that background a little bit more. Use it to get a nice clean edge. The background is always an opportunity to carve out the silhouette of your subject. That's my favorite thing to take advantage of when painting the background. You can clean up your edges, sharpen everything, and really make it stand out from the background. The dark shadow really helps to make that bottom plane stand out. I like using one of these joint compound knives just to get like straight edges. I think it's looking pretty good. I see a couple areas that can use a bit more lightening, but other than that, I think that's it. I think we're good to go. I like how it came out. All right, back again. We finished this first study of the female planar bust statue from 3D Total. Just going to paint a second one with a different angle and different lighting. So in this one, this is it's gonna be more of a 3/4 view with half of the face in shadow and then a little bit of some additional light as well. This is actually just RGB lights from my computer, so it's actually useful for getting some additional light. But for this one, just gonna go with this like a magenta backlight. But yeah, so I'm gonna continue, and just to start off, a base layer, burnt umber again. I might try it as much as I can, try to just use that same ultramarine and burnt umber. Limited palette, might be able to get away with it, although it's probably gonna need an additional color to get this magenta backlight. Might have to use an additional color for that, but yeah, let's go. Mixing up some burnt umber, and this time I'm just gonna up front just going to get rid of all the white of the paper. Once again, that's just to help with get rid of the white of the paper so that it's easier to judge values. I'm using a little bit more concentrated paint towards the bottom where the statue is resting on the wooden table. Looks good. I'm also gonna do a quick value study. It's still a bit wet. I might have to, let it dry for a second so that the value study, the colors stay in their proper place. Or let's see how it looks. But yeah, just quick value study once again. Basically all of the left side of the face is in shadow. There's a little bit of light peeking through on that left cheek, but most of it is in shadow. Cast shadow from the nose. When the paper is wet, the paint will flow to wherever there's water, so it can be tricky to get sharp edges when the paper is still damp. But in this case, it's just gonna be a quick value study. So in general, the rule of thumb is more water equals less control, and vice versa, less water gives you more control. All right, that looks good enough for a quick value study. So now I'm just gonna speed up the drying process a little bit. Hair dryer. All right, looking good, pretty dry. Now I'm gonna start getting those darks in, starting with the shadow side on the left side of the face, basically all that. For that dark color, I'm just gonna mix up ultramarine, add some ultramarine to this burnt umber to make it close to black. Probably about close to a 50-50 ratio. Not exactly, but it's probably leaning more towards the burnt umber side, I'd say. And actually, since we can just glaze over for that purple color on the left, I'm gonna just paint over this. So I'm gonna actually paint that entire shadow shape. Let's see how this turns out, but the paint is pretty dilute, so it'll be easy to cover up with more opaque paint later on if we decide that we don't like the color, and so that the pencil sketch can still show through. We don't want to lose the landmark, that the roadmap that we created with our initial pencil sketch. All right. The other thing I want to do is put in this black background. That dark is gonna make seeing all the values. It's gonna put all the values on the painting in context, because that black is gonna be the darkest part of the entire image. So we'll be able to calibrate based off of that, calibrate all the other values. So I'm just gonna mix burnt umber and ultramarine, and you can see just how dark that mixture can be. And I'm making it quite opaque as well. And once this is down, it should make all this instantly pop forward because it's separated from the background. We'll see if that's true in a second. While I'm at it, give this black a chance to dry. I'm also gonna darken the table values as well. That will also help to pull out the portrait. And that is just gonna be mainly burnt umber. All right, that's the background. Let's start adding some of these lighter values, mostly just white with a touch of a tiny bit of ultramarine. See how that looks. This gray, it's like light gray that I'm applying, is already starting to make the painting pop out from the background. Since it's pretty dilute, I'm just painting right over the borders between the edges, because I can always fix it later. But this just kind of helps it to not have too many like gaps later. But this is about it for now. And then I'm gonna start working on the shadows again, just so that we'll have some more context for these lights. Because right now, basically when we have more information, we'll be able to know if this value needs to be brighter or darker. But we won't know until we have some more context. So, and this will also give all of this a chance to dry. So let's move on. On the darkest planes on the face are basically the planes that are facing away from both the primary light source coming from this way and the secondary purple light source from this way. So all of these planes here that aren't really directly facing the light sources, those are gonna be receiving the least amount of light, making them look the darkest. So let's get those in and use that mixture from that dark mixture from before, which was mostly just that mixture of ultramarine and burnt umber. I want to start getting some colors down to see what to do about that purple light. So I think I'm gonna use this color. I'm torn between either magenta or violet. I think I'm gonna use violet. Yeah, let's do violet. I'm just gonna glaze over it lightly. This is pretty dilute. See how that dries. See how it looks once it dries. I'm gonna let some burnt umber get with the violet. See what that violet looks like with some ultramarine in it, and make it a little darker and bluer. Not bad. All right, so I'm gonna let this violet have a chance to dry so I can see what it actually looks like. And in the meantime, let's work on a different area. Switch to this angle shader brush, 1/2 inch. There's actually a little bit of purple coming into this third plane in the eye. And there you have it. Our 2 finished lighting studies of the planar female bust statue from 3D Total. And once again, shout out to 3D Total for sending over the statue for me to test out. And if you wanted to pick up one for yourself, be sure to check out 3dtotal.com to pick up your own, or check out any of the other anatomical figures that they have. I hope this was helpful. I hope you were able to pick up a couple tips. And once again, just thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.